Story one, this happened a few summers back, when I was still living in my family's old house with my parents. To give you some context, my folks were the kind of people who almost never left home at the same time. One of them was always there watering the lawn, fixing something in the garage, keeping the place tidy. So when they suddenly announced that they'd be taking a long weekend trip together, leaving me behind, I was stunned. In all my years living there, I couldn't remember a single instance when they had both gone away without me. For me, it felt like winning the lottery. An empty house, all to myself. No rules, no interruptions. Naturally, I decided to make the most of it. I called MJ, my girlfriend, at the time and asked her to come stay the weekend. Looking back, that decision still feels like one of those choices where you think you're just setting yourself up for some harmless fun, but it ends up twisting into something you'll never forget. MJ was different. She had this restless, daring streak that made every situation feel unpredictable. That was one of the reasons I was so drawn to her, though. It's also why things didn't work out between us in the long run. She loved to push limits. She'd grin at me with this wild sparkle in her eyes, and suddenly I'd find myself doing things I never thought I would that first night. As soon as she noticed the pool glowing in the backyard, I saw that mischievous spark flicker. She suggested we go skinny dipping. Just like that, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. At first, I laughed it off. Our neighbors weren't far, and I knew the chances of someone seeing us were high. But MJ was relentless. She leaned on me with her playful charm until I caved. Before long, we were slipping into the warm water, laughing and whispering, the cool night air brushing against our skin. The stars were faint but visible overhead, the pool lights casting that shimmering turquoise glow across the yard. For a while, it felt perfect, like something out of a memory you'd try to cling to forever. Now, let me describe the setup of the house because it matters. The pool sat right outside the wide bay windows of the living room. At night, with the lights on inside, those windows acted almost like a stage. From the pool, you could see every detail of the living room, every picture frame, every lamp, every bit of furniture bright and exposed, like looking into a glass display case. On the flip side, if someone had been standing inside, they could have seen us just as clearly. At first, I thought the view made me feel safer, tethered to the house, but that illusion didn't last. At one point, MJ was talking, rambling, I think, about some trip she wanted us to take when something caught my eye. Through the windows, I noticed a shape. A shadow stretched across one of the walls, faint but undeniable. At first, I told myself it had to be some trick of the light, but then it shifted, unmistakably. Someone was moving inside my house. The air in my chest seemed to solidify. My smile dropped, and I froze, just staring at that patch of darkness sliding across the wall before disappearing deeper into the house. My skin went cold. I leaned in close to MJ and whispered for her to get out of the pool. She must have caught the seriousness in my voice because, for once, she didn't argue. We slipped out quietly, drying off as fast as we could. I told her to go straight to the pool house, lock the door, turn off the light, and stay silent. She didn't even question me, her usual playful demeanor gone. Meanwhile, I stepped inside through the back door as quietly as possible. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to run. But some other part, some mixture of adrenaline and stubbornness pushed me forward. My parents had raised me to handle myself, and I wasn't about to let some stranger walk round my house while I hid. I grabbed the largest knife from the kitchen counter and started moving through the rooms. That's when I started noticing things, little, unsettling details, a chair in the dining room slightly pulled out, as if someone had just been sitting there. A framed photo on the wall hanging crooked, a mug on the counter that I didn't remember using. It was all wrong subtle. Quiet disturbances that didn't feel like the work of a thief. They felt deliberate, as though someone had been living in the space while I wasn't looking, room by room. I crept, expecting to see someone dart out at any second. My heart was pounding so violently I was sure it was giving me away. But nothing. Every window was locked. Every door was shut. No broken glass. No pry marks. The house was sealed. And yet I knew what I saw. Eventually, frustration and fear got the better of me, and I called the police. They arrived quickly, combing through every inch of the place: attic, basement, closets, even the yard. Their flashlights swept over the walls, floors, ceilings, but they came up empty. No sign of forced entry. No footprints. Nothing. One of. The officers suggested maybe I'd scared the intruder off before they could grab anything. But the way he said it made me think he didn't believe it himself. When they left, the silence in the house felt heavier than before. MJ and I didn't want to stay. But we had no choice. We barricaded the bedroom door, knife on the nightstand, and tried to sleep. At some point in the dead of night, I woke too. The sound of creaking floorboards above me. At first, I thought it was just my nerves, but then came the footsteps. Slow, measured, moving from one end of the upstairs hallway to the other. My blood turned to ice. I sat there, straining to hear. Every nerve in my body tuned to those sounds. They grew louder. Descending the staircase, step by deliberate step. Whoever it was wasn't rushing. They were taking their time. I grabbed the knife and slipped out of the room before MJ could stop me. By the time I reached the bottom of the stairs, the front door stood wide open, letting the night air drift in. Whoever had been there was gone again. The next morning, the true weight of it hit me. The kitchen drawers had been emptied. Every single knife in the house was missing. Not just the one I carried, all of them, along with some cash, watches, and small electronics. But it was the knives that haunted me. It wasn't random theft. It was a message. When my parents returned and I told them everything, they were surprisingly calm about it. Maybe too calm. They changed the locks, bought a new security system. But nobody ever explained how someone had gotten in or where they could have hidden while the police searched. Even now, I don't scare easily. But I'll never shake the image of that shadow gliding across the wall, or the sound of those slow footsteps overhead, as if someone was making themselves at home in the place I thought was safest. And the knives, I still can't stop wondering what they were taken for. Story to this happened last spring during our campus's big festival weekend. I go to a mid-sized university in southern New Jersey, and every April we have what's called Spring Jam. It's our version of Coachella live bands, food trucks, carnival rides, even little booths with free merch. The whole campus turns out. People spend all semester waiting for it, and when it finally comes, the energy is wild. That year, I was a sophomore. Like most students, I stayed out late. The night felt safe enough. Our town is suburban and quiet. Even at 2 or 3 in the morning, it doesn't feel sketchy. That's probably why I didn't think much of walking back to my dorm by myself. My building was Maple Hall, about a 10-minute walk from the festival grounds. What I didn't know was that earlier that night, round midnight, a group of masked people, 5 or 6 of them, had been seen roaming campus. They were banging on random doors, riding round on bikes, and hanging out near the dorm entrances. Some students were posting warnings on Snapchat, saying they looked like they were trying to scare people. But I hadn't been on my phone much. I was just enjoying The festival. So, when I left my friend's dorm round to 15 a.m. and started heading toward Maple Hall, I had no clue about any of that. I swiped my ID at the door, stepped inside, and headed down the hall. At first everything felt normal. The building was quiet. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and I could hear the hum of the vending machine near the stairwell. But then, as I reached the lounge, I noticed someone sitting there. That wouldn't normally be strange, it's a college dorm. People are always awake at weird hours. But this person wasn't studying or watching TV. He was sitting completely still, in the middle of the couch, wearing a black ski mask, just sitting. His body was slouched, but his head was tilted toward me. It didn't click right away. I actually slowed my steps, like my brain needed an extra second to process what I was seeing. When it hit me, my stomach dropped. Before I could move, the masked guy stood up quickly like he'd been waiting for me. I panicked and bolted into the nearest bathroom, locking the door behind me. I stayed there, heart hammering, for what felt like forever, probably 15 minutes, maybe longer. I kept listening for footsteps, but after a while it went quiet. Part of me thought I was being ridiculous. Maybe it was some dumb prank. And he'd already left. Eventually, I cracked the door open. The hallway was empty. Cautiously, I stepped out, clutching my phone in one hand and my keys in the other. I decided to head toward the side exit. It was closer to my room. I walked as calmly as I could, trying not to look over my shoulder. That's when I saw him again. He was still in the lounge, sitting in the exact same spot. The difference this time was that his bike was leaning against the door, and a chair had been wedged against the frame, blocking one of the exits. It looked deliberate, like he had set up some kind of trap. My pulse was so loud I could hear it. In my ears, I had pepper spray on my keychain. I pulled it out and held it at my side, not pointing it at him, but making it clear I had it. He didn't move. He didn't even twitch. Just watched me, like he was feeding on the fact that I was terrified. I forced myself to walk past him, eyes forward, and pushed through the other door. I didn't look back outside. The cold air hit me like a shock. I was halfway to Magnolia Street when I heard the sound of tires. On pavement, I turned and saw 3 more masked people riding bikes toward me. They swerved close, circling round like vultures. They didn't touch me, but they laughed and shouted things I couldn't fully make out. A couple of them were waving what looked like guns. Maybe they were fake airsoft or BB guns, but in that moment, I wasn't about to take chances. I tried to stay calm and walked faster. They stayed just out of reach, heckling me. My hands shook so badly I could barely type when I texted my friend, "Come outside now, please." He met me by Magnolia and walked me back. By then the bikers had vanished. But my nerves were shot. I didn't call the police that night. I wasn't hurt, technically, just shaken. It wasn't until the next morning that I told my mom, and she ended up reporting it. Later that day, I got texts from a couple of guy friends. They said they'd also been approached by a group of masked kids, and a few of them had pulled guns. Nobody was injured, but it was serious enough that campus police started patrolling more heavily. Theories spread fast. Some people said it was just local teens messing around. Others thought it was organized hazing. The scariest possibility was that they weren't students at all, just armed strangers who'd managed to slip into our dorms. What gets me even now is the look on that guy's face, or at least what I could see of it through the mask. He didn't need to say anything. The silence, the way he moved just enough to make me run, the way the group later cornered me on bikes, it felt calculated. like their whole goal was fear, and it worked. I've never walked home alone at night since. Story 3. This all went down a couple summers back, when I was still with Rachel. I've kept quiet about it until now, not because I'm ashamed, but because I didn't want to risk drawing, and wanted attention to her family. Enough time has passed. We're no longer together, and I figure it's safe to finally put it out there. Back then, Rachel had taken a job as a youth mentor for a city-run summer program. The place was about a 45-minute drive from her pristine suburban neighborhood. A neighborhood where the lawns looked like they'd been trimmed with scissors and every house seemed to come straight. HT out of a real estate brochure, too. This day, I never really understood why she loved the job so much. It didn't align with her ambitions or her family's expectations. But she poured herself into it, and I didn't push the issue. Her house was the type you'd expect in that kind of area: large front lawn, wide driveway, a sprawling 3 floors, and more rooms than I could ever count, perfect for hosting. So, naturally, when the counselor started planning their end-of-summer party, her house became the obvious pick. This wasn't Rachel's first time throwing camp-related get-togethers, but it was my first time experiencing one. Her parents were, as usual, away for the weekend. That wasn't unusual. They traveled constantly, without airing too much of her family's private business. I'll just say their dynamic was strange. Their interactions felt more like business, partners holding quarterly meetings than parents raising a daughter. Everything was polite, calculated, and painfully hollow. Her father at least had a laid-back vibe that I respected, but even he carried that strange air of detachment. The night of the party, the house quickly filled with bodies, music thumped. Laughter carried out the open windows, and people spilled into the backyard where tiki torches lit up the grass. It should have been the kind of night you look back on fondly. But then Pete showed up. Pete had the kind of presence that made my skin crawl. Loud, cocky, constantly in everyone's face, and immediately interested in Rachel. He wasn't just chatting her up. He was leaning close, touching her arm when he spoke, laughing a little too hard at everything she said. He didn't even try to hide that he was flirting. I knew Rachel's habit of being overly friendly with other guys, something that had caused tension before, but I also knew calling her out in front of everyone would only lead to a fight. So I chose a different strategy. I made Pete my drinking buddy. Every time he finished a cup, I was right there topping it off. I laughed at his jokes, clapped him on the back, and encouraged him to keep drinking. My family history blessed me or cursed me, depending on your perspective. With an iron stomach for alcohol, Pete wasn't built the same way. By midnight, he was sprawled across the basement couch, snoring with his mouth open and drool soaking into the cushions. Rachel wasn't impressed. She caught on to my little scheme and confronted me about it. I denied it at first, then eventually admitted I'd helped speed things along. We argued for a few minutes, but it fizzled into nothing. Just one more disagreement stacked on top of all the others we had. That summer, still, I couldn't shake the sense that my childish move had poisoned the mood somehow. The house was hot, crowded, and unbearably loud. I slipped outside for some fresh air. The driveway was a pocket of quiet compared to the chaos inside. I leaned against Rachel's car, gazing up at the night sky. That's when I noticed him. At the far edge of the yard, just beyond the glow of the streetlight, stood a figure. He wasn't moving, just watching. I narrowed my eyes, trying to make out his features, but the shadows swallowed most of him. Fueled by liquid confidence, I called out, "Hey, you lost or something?" The man shifted forward, slow and deliberate. His silhouette told me he was male, but that was about all I could tell. He stopped several feet away, then spoke in a flat, almost rehearsed tone. Are her parents home? It wasn't just the question, it was the way he asked, as though he already knew the answer. My throat tightened before I could answer. He repeated himself, this time mentioning Rachel's parents by name. That sent a chill down my spine. I lied, told him they were inside. He gave the smallest nod, said all right, then turned and walked away, not to a car, not to another house, just straight down the street, until he vanished into the dark. Something about him unsettled me, but I forced myself back inside. I ended up in the basement, batting a ping-pong ball round with a couple stragglers while the louder crowd migrated upstairs round the pool table. For a while, I managed to forget about the man outside. Then the doorbell rang. At first, I brushed it off. People came and went all night. But then it hit me, Rachel had told everyone to use the back door. The front entrance wasn't supposed to see any traffic. My stomach dropped. I excused myself and made my way upstairs, passing Rachel's room. I noticed she was passed out on her bed, utterly dead to the world. It struck me then that I was probably the only soberish person left in the house. I turned off her lamp, shut her door quietly, and went to the front entrance. Standing there was Bella, a counselor who'd had way too much to drink. I asked who had rung the bell. After a lot of slurred nonsense, she managed to tell me some. Older guy had claimed to be a family friend, saying he needed to return something he borrowed. You let him in. I snapped. She just shrugged, mumbled something, and staggered off into the crowd. I bolted upstairs to Rachel's parents' bedroom. My heart sank the second I pushed the door open. Drawers hung open. Jewelry boxes sat empty. The closet looked gutted. Whoever the man was, he hadn't been bluffing. He knew exactly where to look. I was about to leave when I caught the faintest shift in the mirror on the back of the door. Someone moving. Someone ducking out of sight. I spun round just in time for the intruder to slam into me. The impact drove me to the floor. Air knocked from my lungs. His hands clawed at me, wild and frantic, like he was trying to pin me or tear at my clothes. Panic gave